Welcome, and I'm so glad you are joining in to learn about Judah, the making of a patriarch. This is the second of 3 videos in a series on Judah and Genesis 38, also known as the story of Judah and Tamar. The first video gave us the information we will use in the detailed understanding of this passage, so if you haven't had the chance to view that, you may wish to begin there. This video will address the happenings in verses 1 through 13. As always, have your Bible, a notebook, a pad, and a handout ready with your pen. We're diving right in here. The meanings of names used in Genesis 38 are listed in this chart. And refer to page 6 of the Judah handout, which includes a more detailed list of the meanings of names in this chapter. Remember, in Hebrew, the names are significant, not just as what we call the person the name is assigned to, but for the meaning behind the name. And sometimes when we look at the names, we can find a hidden additional meaning to the story that can bring great significance. So this slide shows chapter 38 with a replacement of the names of the individuals with the meanings of their names. You can pause the presentation and read this to see if there are any recurring phrases that might help you in understanding what the key issues of the story might be. Our start-out discussion here is to examine what the key issues of the story are. Is Tamar a whore? What do you think about Judah? And what is it about Tamar that makes her more righteous than Judah? And do you agree that she is? Why or why not? Please pause the presentation and write down your thoughts. Verse 1, the setting, so much in one little verse. Judah heads out of town, but for what purpose? For his self-interest or another? He leaves his brothers, and all of this arises issues of separation and migration. Are these a good thing for the people of Israel? He goes to the justice of the people, the meaning of the name Adulamite. These things and others, this issue of separation and migration, will be judged. Hira, a noble race, something people should aspire to be. Judah went to live among a noble race because that's who he wants to live with. Judah goes to a place of justice and nobility, a place of honor, which is the primary theme of the story. And he does so by escaping his family. What do you think of Judah's decision to head out on his own? Write down your thoughts. Pause the presentation. The next 2 slides will give you more on this topic to think about. An opinion about Judah leaving his family. It's an act of indifference and abandonment. Judah tacitly commits the very act of fratricide that he had tried to prevent with Joseph. Judah's going away is therefore a going down, figuratively as well as literally, from his community at Hebron. Judah takes a Canaanite wife like Esau, and by his Canaanite wife, Judah has 3 sons. More quotes to think on. Precisely because of their communal commitment to care for righteousness, they must not, even in marriage that takes them from their father's house, cease to be their brother's keepers. True, if they devote themselves only to their brothers, they uphold their past at the expense of their future. Their ties to blood of origin at the expense of the ties to their wives and children. But if they set out, like Judah, solely on their own, indifferent to the fate of their brothers, they effectively cut ties to past and community, placing their own progeny and advantage above all else. If the home of one's progeny is to become a home also of perpetuation and transmission, the reference for one's origins is paramount. Kinship and attachment to the community must triumph over sibling rivalry and moderate somewhat the drive for independence. All these quotes are giving us quite a head full of thoughts. Stop for a minute and record some of yours. Judah starts a family in verses 2 through 5, and he marries a Canaanite, an outsider to the Jews. In Deuteronomic theology, this is seen as a shameful act. Note, The wife is never named in this passage. Her father, Shua, his name means wealth. And the question to ask here is, did Judah marry for money? If Judah is righteous, God will bless him. He's not being a good deed person. He's trying to do it all himself without God. 3 sons are listed with the meanings of the names. What might be the message to the reader about Judah contained in the names of his sons? Wake up. Yes, you're strong and vigorous, but request what you ask for. Ask. Pray. Connect and reconcile with God. Don't try to do it all yourself. Trust in God. When this last son was born, however, they were in a town called Shezeb, which means false, and it's from a root word in Hebrew, kazab, which means to lie, to tell a lie or be a liar, to be in vain, to fail, deceive, to disappoint. This reader would recognize that they were in a place of lying, deceiving, failing, in vain for themselves, and they were ignoring God. Judah acquires a daughter in Genesis 38, 6 and 7. Tamar becomes his adopted daughter in her marriage to Er, and she is now part of Judah's family and responsibility. Tamar, meaning date palm or palm tree, recalls that date palms are sacred to the cult of Ishtar, a Canaanite goddess of fertility. Er was wicked or evil in the eyes of Yahweh, so the text says. Yahweh puts him to death. The Hebrew word here is muth, meaning to die, to kill, to have one executed, to die prematurely, and to die prematurely by neglect of wise moral conduct. This is de-theology. The wicked will perish. Because he died, he must have been wicked, using the D-language writers' focus to keep the reader focused on his theological beliefs and to explain why Er died. But, in fact, we have no idea what he did wrong, if anything. Does this make sense? During the time the story was written down, which was much later than the time Judah existed, these events, which happened in the past, were interpreted in light of the theology of the day and used to make a point about that theology. The message was, get right with God and you will be blessed. If not, you will be cursed. The corollary of this expression was being explored here. If you are cursed, then you must be wicked, but that remains to be seen. Obligations of a brother-in-law are talked about in verses 8 through 10. The writer does not call it levirate marriage here, but it's using images from this law that we've already discussed. What is the law and what function does it play in the community? And why do they have those laws? Leon Cass provides a good brief answer. In levirate marriage, a man serves literally as his brother's keeper. He refuses to allow his brother to die without a trace. Also, he refuses to nullify his sister-in-law's marriage, vindicating her claim to motherly fulfillment within her marriage. Taking seriously the commandment, be fruitful and multiply, levirate marriage elevates the importance of progeny above personal gratification, and hence the importance of lineage and community above the individual. In accepting the duty of the levir, a man simultaneously shows reverence for his ancestors, respect for the meaning and purpose of marriage, and devotion to the future of his family and his people. But I have some questions here. What about inheritance? If Onan has a child for his brother, that child will get 1/3 of the inheritance from Judah. He's giving up that inheritance and also depriving that inheritance, which may be passed along to Onan's children. In addition, what about the impact on Tamar? Is she never allowed to remarry and have a new life with another person? Is she trapped in perpetual widowhood? Onan does not keep the law. He dies. Therefore, he's evil because he perished. What is this also saying about Judah as a father? All his Canaanite children aren't continuing the covenant with God. The honor of Judah. Judah sends Tamar back to her father, which he has the right to do, and he gives up protection of Tamar, which would include her salvation by bearing a child. This is also a decision to kill off his older son's lineage. It is also abandoning Tamar and condemning her to a life without children and to widowhood, not under the protection of her now true family. But Judah says, until Shelah grows up. Well, who needs to grow up here and live into their responsibilities? Judah is primarily concerned that Shelah will also die, and Shelah is Judah's last hope for salvation. Judah says one thing that sounds honorable, but really means the other. He says, remain a widow until the time is right. Well, the time right for whom? Tamar returns to her father's home thinking she will be called back to Judah's home. That is her hope for salvation. In reality, she has been tricked out of her salvation. Leon Cass gives a scathing review of Judah's action here, in which I have reduced to 2 short quotes. What do you think of them? Do you agree or disagree with Leon Cass? Why? Please pause the presentation and record your thoughts on page 4 of the handouts. Note, the quotes have been printed for you there as well. Going to receive the portion due, verses 12 and 13. Judah's wife dies and he goes through the grieving period, and he goes with his buddy Hiram, the Adullamite, to Timnah, to Judah's sheep shearers. In other words, Judah goes with the noble person of justice to receive his portion of the livestock sales. The words imply movement toward restoration and honor. Note that the author here implies that Judah, the patriarch of Israel, is a dishonorable man, and that's pretty tough for readers to swallow. Judah, as the owner of flocks and employing workmen, would be seen as someone to be honored. How should the reader feel about Judah? Honorable or dishonorable? The text is confusing on this matter. And what should the reader do with this conflict? What does Judah have? He has many flocks and men in his employ. He also has a daughter-in-law who was acquired, but who has been abandoned. Is Judah keeping the law? No. In your opinion, what makes a person honorable? Jot down some of your thoughts. Judah's friendship with Hira the Adullamite. In addition to losing 2 sons, he grieves for a wife, and after a period he went up to this sheep shearing, this time of merriment and celebration with Hira the Adullamite in verse 12. This is the first and only dimension of friends and friendship in the book of Genesis, and we're compelled to pause and take notice. Why is friendship, an ever-present human concern, seemingly ignored in the Hebrew Bible? What is it about Judah and his circumstances that lead him toward a friend, and an outside one at that? Judah's turn toward friendship is presented twice as an alternative to family life. See verses 1 and 12. The alternative, both to dwelling in the household of Israel and in married life, is living in friendship with an Adullamite man. Friendship and marriage and family are mutually exclusive alternatives because the Hebrew Bible comes down decisively on the side of marriage and family life. It has little to say for or even about friendship. Mr. Cass gave us that quote. What does Judah's capacity for friendship imply for his suitability as a leader in Israel? The capacity for friendship bespeaks a certain nobility of character and a searching gift of political leadership, capable of inspiring loyalty, camaraderie, and manly courage. The fact that Judah is the only Israelite character in Genesis, indeed in the entire Torah, who has a friend, hints at his subsequent rise to a position of tribal leadership. This ends part 2 of 3 of Judah and the Making of a Patriarch. Please continue on to the 3rd YouTube video to complete this study. Thanks for participating. I hope you'll continue on.